Good morning. Very excited to be here with you today. We're going to talk about next generation DLP with Microsoft Purview and Copilot. Quick intros. My name is Josh Rattan. I'm a principal at PwC. Sit in our data risk and privacy practice and help clients to manage, protect, and harness the power of their data. I'm joined by Adam and Nick. Adam?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Adam Ames here, director with PwC. I work very closely with Josh and Nick. I do focus primarily in the data security space and information governance. Over the last 15, 16 years, really spent my time in the cybersecurity world across the capabilities and domains. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Caromano. I'm a senior product manager in our data security engineering group at Microsoft.
Excellent. All right. So we have a focused agenda for our discussion today. Going to cover three main topics. The first is the familiar stage setting. What are the challenges and opportunities represented by DLP? The issues with the legacy approach to the problem set, and setting the stage for the role of AI to help enable a future state capability. I'm going to turn it over to Adam at that point, and he's going to take us through a real-life case study, which we see as really compelling in setting the stage for how we can bring these real-world capabilities to life with Purview and Copilot. Using that as a basis for then moving to the third chapter, which is how do we take this and codify it into a framework and a program that hopefully you could take back some learnings to help enable with your clients. And Nick's going to showcase some of those capabilities that are paramount to achieving those outcomes. So without further ado, a familiar scene for many of you that spend time in the data protection space. You have a growing data estate that is founded on legacy on-prem, in some cases, an expanding architecture in the cloud, and a plurality of endpoints that you're governing. And the question becomes, where's my sensitive data? How is it protected? Who has access to it? And how do I get control around this? Not a new problem, but certainly a challenge when you think about the legacy approaches to thinking about this estate. So scanning, being able to triage the data, understanding how to manage, alert, and action, it becomes a real problem. And these issues are not new, but it leads to a couple of outcomes that we typically see with our clients. One, it's a monitor-only posture. A lot of signal intelligence coming in, not a lot of action. That's mainly founded on a second problem or issue, which is that there's a high noise, low signal intensity to the alerts that are coming through, either scanning or data in motion issues. And then ultimately that leads to not a lot of action in terms of blocking, a significant desire to minimize business disruption, and DLP is there, but maybe not as actively used as it could be, and the value is not fully realized. Enter the role of AI, Copilot, Purview, and the capabilities that are enabled by our friends at Microsoft. We have found a number of compelling use cases where we can bring the combination of Purview and Copilot to overcome some of the issues that we're commonly seeing. It's not as though the data loss prevention lifecycle itself is changing. It's the idea that we can automate, enable, and focus in on the high-risk data assets to then realize the ability to protect and block actively. So a couple of examples would be your L1 triage that Adam's going to go through into a bit more detail. The second is around contextualization of the alerts, doing the hard work, the legwork around what is the issue that's been alerted, what's the context around it, bringing data sources and signals together to enable downstream action. And then the role of agents in the ability of doing the root cause analysis and triage process. even going as far as saying the agent's playing a role with interaction with users that are trying to send or store sensitive data and understanding what the background of that is. So to bring to life these capabilities, we're going to go into our case study, and I'm going to turn it over here to Adam to dive deeper.
All right. Wonderful. Josh, thank you. So setting the stage here, this is a real client with a goal to go from outdated legacy tooling, let's call it shelfware collecting dust, that was sitting in monitor mode, creating noise, blinking alerts. And the goal here is to move to prevent inappropriate sharing, prevent data loss, change user behavior and company culture, and, as you'll see in this environment, minimal business disruption. That risk tolerance is non-existent here. So, with that background, understanding this client environment, one of the things that we did early on, and we'll walk you through this step-by-step process, is harness the power of Purview to really find where our most sensitive data lives, who has access to it, so we can start prioritizing the remediation of it. So you'll hear continued themes throughout this presentation, but some of the highlights here. At this company of roughly 35,000 employees and users, almost 250,000 documents existed that contained secrets. Secrets being usernames and passwords, secrets being API keys, session tokens, the things that, if compromised, are the keys to the kingdom. The challenge, the next part here, is the creation of the toxic combination. So not only do these secrets exist in this unstructured data world, they are also shared company-wide. So in that scenario, when they're shared company-wide, now we're in a position of you don't have to compromise as an attacker the credential, you have to compromise a credential. And all of a sudden, all of your layered defenses that are in place simply fall off because an attacker goes to your collaboration site, types in the word password, and look what shows up. Security through obscurity is not acceptable anymore. The barrier to entry into finding all of this, powered by AI, is creating this opportunity. So, you saw some of that preliminary context here, but how did we actually tackle this problem? Step one, they needed to have the policies, the procedures, the standards, and the overall program that wraps around this function. So that was step one, making sure we have the executive stakeholder alignment. Step two, we need to address that problem of oversharing and turn it into intentional sharing. In this environment, we removed that option to radio button share with everyone in your organization. And we said, that is still okay. We're focusing on business continuity, but you're going to have to type in all employees, all contractors, all guests. And guess what? As expected, they didn't share it company-wide anymore. So we didn't prevent it. We just changed company culture and user behavior. Next, we needed to find where that sensitive data lives, who has access to it, to prioritize the most important pieces. In this scenario, as I mentioned, we then honed in on secrets. From there, we're able to use Purview to apply sensitivity labels based on the data classification requirements and standards. So now we're able to roll out business unit by business unit to our most sensitive departments, security, legal, finance, HR, and we're able to empower the user to label the document with complete transparency of the controls that it provides. So when you're in a named cyber incident, wonderful, make sure you're labeling it with that appropriate label, and now security is wrapped all around it. Step 5, and this is where we'll dig in, locking down that access. Locking down the documents where we found with high confidence what documents exist with the secrets. We need to make sure that we're removing the erroneous access. For years, company culture was share with everyone because it's easy. Well, as you'll see when we get into some of the data, that was a big number, and the impact was real and limited to no business disruption. But in order to do that, we've got to get to an agentic solution that bridges the gap between monitor and enforce. In the DLP world, it is often thought of as a binary. You are either blocking or you are not blocking. You are blocking because it is against the company standard, or you are not blocking because it is not against company standard. And we all, as security and information governance practitioners, appreciate there's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of middle ground, and that's what's enabled and empowered by Copilot on top of Purview to solve that exact problem. So, in this case study, we walked through the steps. We were able to remove extra access, lock it down to over 200, from over 230,000 documents, from everyone has access to now only those who should have access. Going back to, we're making it hard on the attacker, easy on the user. You don't have to compromise a credential anymore. We're removing 99.9% of that risk. You would have to compromise the. We're empowering our layered defenses. And as you can see, the fidelity was high. The false positive rates were basically not there. And one of the functions, as we talked about, as the business required, we're not allowed to have business disruption. So, leveraging Purview, we had the opportunity for users to self-report false positives and exceptions, which then empowers, from an agentic solution, something to go after. If you're blocking, it's blocked. If it's not blocking, it's not blocking. But now we're in a position of that middle ground of it has already been blocked. We have now reported something as either a false positive or an override. Here's the fun part. We built out these agentic solutions to, in a timely manner, within 24 hours, reach out to the user and ask some natural questions that you would expect from security. First and foremost, were you aware this even happened? And if not, thanks, I'm going to immediately pull this up to our SOC and say, hey, this is something worth investigating. Maybe it's an account takeover, maybe it's an early indicator of compromise, maybe it's nothing. Now let's keep going. Here's the standard, here's the policy that you've just violated. We saw it. What gives? Well, in this scenario, we're talking about secrets. I needed to share those secrets with my team, provide some sort of business justification. What if this agent could help not only remove the secret from that document, but also help the user navigate to the multiple approved security secret repositories where those secrets should reside? Have the interaction with the user, give them the confidence and the capability to do it themselves, or, if asked, let the agentic solution do it. Let it delete it from this document and put it into that repository. Let's give you the access. Now, all of a sudden, you've empowered the user, and you haven't even touched your security team yet. This is all agentic. If they then need to go beyond that, we're asking really two questions. Do you need an exception to the standard, or does the standard need to change? And we're going to talk about that when we go through the organizational model here. But what now is empowering the data protection team is the contextual analysis, the awareness, the prioritization of not the annoying false positives, which in this case are low, but rather where it is a nuanced, layered approach that we now need to take some sort of action. On top of that, let's empower our insider risk team. Let's show them where these dots are connected where Josh has requested to send the same document 500 times in the last week. Hey, I think that's important. This agentic solution now covers all of that and shares it up the chain. So when we think about what that really means in the case of this case study, we were really laser focused on DLP. DLP is a tool in your tool belt. It is a critical one, but it has to be surrounded by a broader program for data protection and information governance. Up at the top, you'll see the concept of the program governance. It's where you have your executive alignment. You're making sure you have the right resources, the KPIs that you're tracking. How do you know if you are successful when the alert rate starts going down? These are those challenges you need to stay in alignment with. We talk about the core data protection functions that come out of the Microsoft stack with Purview, with Defender, with Sentinel. You also have with that the core data governance stack. How do you find the data, classify it? How do you go all the way to the other end with the disposition, data minimization? But what I want to highlight here is the integration to the broader security program. So what this data protection solution starts empowering, as I mentioned, is an enforcement mechanism, not the traditional him and hawing and should I have an exception or not. The good news is many of you in this room, at your companies, at our clients, I am confident have strong security programs that cover your GRC, your TPRM, your security architecture, your cyber defense, your privacy programs. And what we find time and time again is that the intake to all of those, the intake to your privacy impact assessments, the intake to your security architecture reviews, and your third-party risk management, it's form-based. It's what the user knows now. And oftentimes, 6 months later, without any ill intent, that is a materially different challenge. So what happens? Everything goes through the appropriate reviews, you leverage the right process, you then go 6 months later, and all of a sudden, the wrong data is going out the door to the wrong clients, to the wrong customers, the wrong third parties. Data protection using Purview and this agentic solution now closes that loophole. How? It then takes the forms that were all manually filled out, that were all risk scored, applies the appropriate controls and protections automatically, and doesn't matter 6 months later when something changes, it's going to block that data from going out. That raises the flag, they call the data protection team, and now the data protection team gets to ask that question. Do you need to have an exception to the standard, or do you need to change the standard?
Yeah.
It's an important call out because now it's a materially different response. Now it's oh, I changed the environment, this is a different scenario. Wonderful. Let me introduce you to my risk management friends for an exception and tracking it, and the other mitigating controls. Let me reintroduce you to your process that already exists to go through those parameters. Re-up those controls, and now Purview and your Copilot and your data protection team get to play the enforcement. We're no longer in that middle ground.
Yeah, and real
Please.
quick. So I think a couple points that I think are super important as we talk about security all up and where data security falls into this. It is truly a team sport. It's no longer a siloed view within our data estate. Data security is as important. In many cases, it's more important. I'm a little biased as we talk about just security all up. And so it's important that when we look at this slide as an example, this is a journey. This is an end-to-end journey. So you can see that there's a lot of things to do, but from a product perspective, that helps to reduce the complexity of that journey and gives you that visibility that you're looking for, but more importantly, like he was saying, the enforcement piece of this. And the last thing I want to say is really, really understand and kind of go back to your organizations and really hit home with the idea that DLP, as an example, data loss prevention as an example, is dynamic. It is not meant to be set at once and we're done. It is meant to be fluid. It is meant to be re-upped, as you said. And changed and adjusted with business process changes and even with the market as we talk about things like AI.
Absolutely. So what does it take to make sure this happens? I've touched on a number of these. You gotta have something that you can hang your hat on that's defensible. You have to have your policies, standards, and procedures documented. You have to know where that sensitive data lives, who has access to it, so we can determine the scope of the problem we're trying to solve. And is that problem worth solving? So when you're going through your DLP programs and you're starting to turn on these enforcements, as Nick was talking about, this is a rinse and repeat process. Find the next thing, enforce, find the next thing, enforce. You don't want to get to the goal line and some executive from some business department that you've never mentioned calls and says, pull the plug, we're not doing this, you're stopping. Leads to the fourth point. You need to have executive alignment from start to finish. So, with all of that, as we've described a program all built on the capabilities of Purview and Copilot, I'm going to hand it here to Nick to actually walk through some of those capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm sure, and I hope many of you are familiar with Microsoft Purview, but if not, so Microsoft Purview is truly that unified platform that gives you visibility and controls across your data estate. And so we like to look at this from kind of 3 points of view, if you will. So data security, data governance, and data compliance. Today's focus, as we're talking about right now, is around the data security pillar. So when we dive into that, you can see that there's components within that data security world that help to come together to help you achieve your overall outcomes. And that's the important piece. We're not really looking at this as a means to just control the movement of data. We're looking at this as a means to achieve a business outcome, which can be things like mitigating oversharing, mitigating data leakage, et cetera. And so when we look at these solutions, you can see that there's many facets that come to this. And as we mentioned earlier, data loss prevention is a key component of that. It is our in-transit enforcement plane for us to ensure that the data is going where it's supposed to be going. And it's important to know, like I mentioned, we need this to be dynamic, and even your policies with adaptive protection and the ability for your DLP to automatically adjust based on the risk level of your users is super important as we allow for our users to be productive in the environment while still maintaining control when the risk requires of something of such. And so you can see here that as part of this journey, information protection, so sensitivity labeling, the ability to classify your content, and pulling all of that together to feed into data loss prevention to be more intelligent and more dynamic and adaptable to your environment to then help with those enforcement planes. As we talk about AI and Security Copilot, there are numerous areas where Security Copilot and Purview really come together to shine. So this slide is great as it shows you where the experiences that are there to help you simplify and allow you to get to the meat of what you're looking to achieve quicker is very much prevalent within the Microsoft Purview portal. The two that I have highlighted here are examples of what we are talking about from an agentic perspective, something that is there to help autonomously reduce your workload while still giving you and exceeding what you would expect from a triage as an example. And so you can see here that we have our alert triage agent for data loss prevention and our alert triage agent for insider risk. And at Ignite, we also have announced our new agent that goes over data classification discovery to help you discover the data so you know your data and help you in that journey as well. But let's talk about agents. So agents are really important as they are there to help continuously learn within your environment. They are not just a process that kicks off after a specific trigger. It is there to understand and evaluate and learn from your environment and from the interactions that you as an administrator and that your users have. And so all of that leads to dynamically being adaptable to what is happening within the environment and what it's seeing, and so that it knows and understands the reaction that it should have as part of that. And obviously, all of this is to operate securely within Microsoft's Zero Trust framework, so that you know that as an agent acts on your behalf or investigates for you, that it's within the confines of your boundaries within your environment. And so when we talk about the alert triage specifically, you can see kind of some of the pain points that we've seen across customers in the industries. So high volume alerts. I'm sure many of you who have piloted DLP in some form or fashion, you saw a lot of alerts come in and you're, oh my gosh, there's so much to look at. And we can see here that roughly 66 per day and only around 60% are actually addressed by a human being. So that leaves a large gap of potential risk that we want to mitigate. And moving into that is the incident complexity. So the amount of time it takes for your resources to actually go through and resolve. So actually removing the overshared link, so the anyone link, or actually going in and potentially changing the permissions on a specific file or a SharePoint site, as we discussed. And then all of this leads into the fact that we don't have data security professionals just hanging out doing nothing. We need more resources and helpful hands to actually go in and help us achieve something within our business outcomes. And so that's what leads into our alert triage agents. They are there to help augment, help support your teams to bring and surface the most important critical alerts so that your team knows exactly what to focus on and actually pinpoint a specific risk versus going through, you know, Adam shared 32 pictures of his cat, right? We don't, yeah, it's fine. We don't care about that, but we care about the credit card data or the PII. And that's what these triage agents are there to do. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, where we're talking about surfacing useful insights for you and your teams to focus on. And then we'll talk about how you would take that to the next level there.
Nick, I think we have a little bit of time, so just one of the things that I would say, maybe obvious to this group, but you know, our clients are operating in a resource-constrained environment. The reality is that the problem space that they're operating in is growing. The ability to operate a DLP-like capability, or any scanning capability for that matter, is not going to be predicated on their ability to grow their staff linearly. So, you know, being able to bring together the capabilities of an agentic architecture and then say to yourselves, okay, I'm able to achieve these goals without having to, you know, hire additional heads, or I can do so with maybe less people capacity and scale to the entire organization, is a really critical ask of our clients, and something that we've seen play out with our client example.
Absolutely.
So with that, if we think about legacy DLP, some of the challenges, as Josh was well describing, is that scalability. It's how do we respond quickly? How do we respond in a timely manner and to the right things, right? Is this a problem worth solving? So here's a new concept of an operating model. Fascinating, right? First, level 0. This is your tools. This is your enforcement mechanism. This is where you have Purview, secure by default design. You have its integration to your SIM to alert when needed. You have the automated blocking. You have the tagging. You have the enforceable controls based on the labels. Your tuned alerts. We want to find the sensitive data attempting to go out the door, not the pictures of the cats, right? Well, we talked about this agentic layer. Gone are the days, because business can't support it, that linear scale of the growth in your data protection team. Often, we're finding our clients with 1, maybe 1.5 to 2 resources in this space, and you start saying, well, how can they respond to these alerts at scale? They can't. They have to be empowered and made sure that they are the ones making those final decisions. Today, we want to make sure human in the loop is that concept we're going to keep saying over and over and over. Tomorrow, with these agentic solutions, their reasoning, their logic, their processing, and decisioning is getting better and better. You set the parameters, you set its objectives, and you let it run. You let it be the scale for you. Then it creates that package that now you have a prioritized set of tasks that you can give your data protection team, that you can give that maybe one resource that is now looking at it and saying, what do I need to do with this? Going back to that question, is there an exception that's needed, or does the standard need to change? Based on that, now I'm going to escalate to the appropriate teams, continuing through the enforcement, continuing through those dynamic changes, continuing through that rinse and repeat model. So, as we look for our takeaways here, there are clearly a lot of legacy challenges still in the market. A lot of shelfware tooling, a lot of complex use cases that are ultimately simplified and answered through the power of Purview and Copilot. The problem is no longer the tool. The problem is the process and the solutions that we've walked through. Data is everywhere. Yesterday, we heard in a session that in the last 2 years, there's been more data combined growth than all the years historically prior. And I'm confident that is going to exponentially increase as we go, exponentially create more challenges, and there again, solved with that scale that AI gives us. DLP has to be part of your broader program, part of the data compliance, data governance, data security, overall data protection, and integrating to all of your broader cyber components. And then, as I mentioned, through cultural change, it is only effectuated through simple, repeatable, scalable, defensible, and automated means. If somebody goes out, sends something out the door, and doesn't hear about it for 3 months, you've lost your chance. You've got to change culture from the start and let AI really power this from start to completion.
And remember, the journey. It's a journey. So we're not trying to enable data loss prevention and block everything. You will get friction. That's right. You will block business processes, and we all know that's not what we want to do. So bite-sized, and I think that's where, when he was talking about discovery of data, it's absolutely important so that you understand where do we need to focus and what do we need to actually protect that is highly critical to my business. And then we leverage DLP to protect that chunk of data, and then we leverage the insights that we get from things like Activity Explorer to then make adjustments and create new policies that then start to scale out across our data estate. And so as part of the executive buy-in, it's helping them understand that we're not looking to interfere with what your teams are doing from a business perspective. We are looking to mitigate and help guide them to make the right choices as they are handling sensitive content. And here's where we're focused and starting with, and then here's what we expect to scale, and then here's how agentic AI can help us achieve quicker resolutions for when something possibly does get caught that wasn't supposed to be.
So, on behalf of everyone here at PwC, and I know with Microsoft, thank you. It has been an absolute privilege, and I hope you found this informative. Please find us around. We are happy to go detailed, deeper conversations in any of these. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm just going to get a picture.
Oh.